This week, what is the Scottish Rite according to Henry Clausen? Well, in a new segment, we're going to be reading some of Clawson's Grand Commander messages that were featured in the New Age magazine. We do the first one in this episode. Then we'll hear from Todd E. Kryson asking a most important question about Freemasonry and our time in it. Have we changed? And what is the importance of true brotherhood? Illustrious Milton Fields lets us know in an article he penned back in 1987. We always talk about guarding the West Gate, but maybe there's something else we need to guard against too, once we're in the fraternity. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode number 685. I want to thank the very excellent folks who make this show possible, whether you're a contributor, fellow producer, or a legacy partner. You make the show happen, and without you, we can't keep it going the way it goes. We've been doing the show since July of 2011, every single week, and this comes on top of everything we all have: work, kids, significant others, our fraternity and other interests, even Netflix. But week after week, y'all keep coming back and making this show possible. So I want to thank those people who do make it possible. If you'd like to see how you can assist this show, head on over to our website, wcypodcast.com, click on support the show, and you can check out the various options there. We've got both Patreon tiers and PayPal tiers, so whatever works better for you. And in advance, just want to say thank you for any considerations. I have been under the weather lately, but I am feeling much better today than I have been the last few days. So I want to thank everybody who's been really cool with me, changing our schedules around and things. In fact, just recently, it's been a little bit of a nightmare trying to, stay active in Masonry from afar since I've been sick. So I've had people taking minutes for me and I'm transcribing them and all of those things. So I know you all know what that's like, but it's much appreciated. And I guess that's what it's all about, brotherhood, right? We're helping each other out and things, especially with some of our administrative tasks. Now, I'll give you a quick preview. Next week on the show, we've got an exclusive interview with Jason E. Reichenberg, who wrote a wonderful new book, The 12 Labors of Hercules in Freemasonry and Esoteric Interpretation. This was very exciting to me because I myself did an entire year of education for the premier Masonic Education Lodge in Illinois, Space Novum 1183. Each month, we took on one of the Herculean labors and looked at it from a lens of Freemasonry, what that teaches and how it can be applied practically in today's world. So we had a lot of fun with that. But one of the great things about these allegories and these mythologies that we study in Freemasonry is they can be looked at through several different lenses. In fact, there are different versions and little details that change from myth to myth, even in regards to the Herculean labors. So we talked a lot about this. We talked about why he got into Masonry, the importance of things, and even the future of Freemasonry. So look forward to that interview coming next week. We'll have that out. But this week, we've got a couple great articles, and we'll start it off with one from illustrious brother Todd E. Kryson, 33rd Degree. Now, he is the founder over at the Midnight Freemasons blog. He recently put up a post on Midnight Freemasons called, Are You Changed? So without any further ado, let's check this one out. Are You Changed? By Brother Todd E. Creason, 33rd Degree. We all knock on the door for a different reason. We're all looking for something. That's what brings us to the door of the lodge to begin with. Some of us find ourselves there because it's a family tradition. Our fathers and uncles and grandfathers were all Masons. There's a lot of different reasons. We're looking for a connection in the community. We're looking for new friends. We're looking for opportunities to serve our community, and we know the Masons play a big role in that. But sometimes we miss the forest for the trees. We miss the main purpose of the fraternity, which is to give us the guidance and instruction on how to become better men. In fact, I'd say most members of our fraternity these days rarely explore and apply what Masonry actually teaches us about character, about finding our purpose. We don't use those resources we have in the fraternity to truly explore those questions we all have about why we're here and what we are meant to do with these few years we have on this earth. I'd have to admit that's why I joined 20 years ago. I was looking for meaning in my life. I was in my mid-30s. I had a good job, a wife that loved me, good friends, and a nice home. But I wasn't content. I didn't feel like I'd discovered what life was all about. I hadn't found that thing yet that tied it all together for me. So I knocked on the door. And I wasn't disappointed in what I discovered. I found hundreds of years of wisdom in how to rebuild myself from the inside out. And my life changed almost immediately. I read a few hundred books and wrote a few books. I couldn't guess how many articles I've written and blog posts I've posted. I've shared a lot of what I've discovered over the years right here, the Midnight Freemasons. But my journey didn't stop there. It led me back to faith, and another transforming experience as God called me to a very different path in life than the one I'd been on. Not everyone's path will lead them to the pulpit, but mine certainly did. And that path began at the lodge door. That's when my course in life began to change. Masonry is about more than friendships and service and activities and meetings. It's about growth. And we recite those words and hear those concepts in our meetings and degrees, but so few of us realize that that's what it's all about. It's about building character. It's about finding our way of making this world a better place. About figuring out what we were built to do, and to find ways to do it. It's about letting ourselves be remade into something the Creator can use for His purpose. So my question for you is this. Are you changed? Are you a Mason that gets it and applies those principles we teach to your life? Or are you pretty much the same now as you were when you joined? I encourage you to dig deeper, apply those lessons, and see what happens. You were put here for a purpose. Start working on that ashlar and see where that path that started at the lodge door may lead you. Todd E. Kryson, 33rd degree. Todd is the founder of the Midnight Freemasons blog. He's also an award-winning author of several books and novels, including Famous American Freemason series and a bunch of others. Head on over to the Midnight Freemasons, check out that blog, subscribe to it, all the things. I'll link back to the article in the show notes. And our thanks goes out one more time to illustrious brother Todd E. Creason. Next up, I've got kind of an introduction, a letter really, from the commander of the Scottish Rite back in 1977. Now these are published in the New Age magazine, something that I read out of quite often because there's just so much great information in these things, but rarely do I read something specific to the magazine. I'm usually reading an article that could have been printed anywhere and probably was printed in transactions of lodges of research as well as being put here in the Scottish Rite's The New Age magazine. Well, if you've ever listened to the show before, you know that I love Henry Clausen, who was the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite Sovereign Grand Commander of the Southern Jurisdiction for a number of years. Starting this month, until I don't have any more, I will try to read at least one of his Grand Commander's messages each week until I run out of them. And I've got a ton, so I think we'll have some fun with this, and it will provide some additional insight into Henry Clausen and what he felt and how he felt about the Scottish Rite. This first one comes from the July 1977 issue, and when you open the cover, there's a little blurb inside of a cloud, and it says, "In the Scottish Rite we proceed in our teachings toward the universal principle of man's unity with man and with the great supreme power. Henry Clausen, Sovereign Grand Commander." So let me read you the Grand Commander's message. This one was titled Derivation of the Rituals and Esotericism of the Scottish Rite. You may ask, at the outset, what is the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry? I am constrained to reply, like the wit, that it is impossible to think about when you come to think about it. I can tell you first what it is not. It is not the formal organization, nor is it the magnificent temples, nor is it a severely secret society, nor is it merely ritual. Perhaps we should content ourselves with the standard definition of Freemasonry that it is a peculiar system of morality, veiled in allegory, and illustrated by symbols. to seek that which is most worth in the world, to exalt the dignity of every person, the human side of our daily activities, and the maximum service to humanity, to aid mankind's search in God's universe for identity, for development, and for destiny, and thereby achieve better men in a better world, happier men in a happier world, and wiser men in a wiser world. Our ultimate goal, simply stated, is mankind's moral and spiritual and intellectual development. Historically, the organizational Scottish Rite of Freemasonry as we know it evolved as the Rite of Perfection over 200 years ago on the continent of Europe under the constitutions of 1762. Later, the Grand Constitutions of 1786 were enacted and became the creative and derivative laws for us and all of our descendant Supreme Councils of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite. Our Supreme Council was organized at Charleston, South Carolina in 1801 as the Mother Supreme Council of the world, and hence, all regular and recognized Supreme Councils throughout the world must trace their pedigree to us. But the actual roots of the Scottish Rite go far deeper. Tracing them is a romantic and exciting quest for adventure in the realm of the mind and spirit. It is a superb story of success, more intriguing than the storied search for the Holy Grail and more rewarding than a successful probe for the Philosopher's Stone. Our teachings and symbols preceded our formal organization by thousands of years. They go deep into ancient ages. The signs, symbols, and inscriptions come to us from across long drifting centuries and will be found in ancient Sumerian clay tablet libraries of the cities of Ur, Lagash, and others of the first true urban large cities, civilization which occurred about 600 years before Egypt was civilized and produced the first large cities on Earth that the first guilds of operative masons on this planet built. They also invented the arch, pillar, dome, and vault, and the working tools of Freemasonry, which include the compass, square trowel, pickaxe, and surveying measuring rod and line. They built with these man's first large temples to the supreme God over all whom they called Enlil. For 2,000 years the desert sands of Iraq covered the great cities of the civilization so that even its name was unknown to the minds of men. Now archaeologists and translators have brought the facts to light, but we must then search further. We delve into the tombs and temples of India, to those of Nubia, through the valley of the Nile in Egypt down to its delta, as well as in what was then known as Chaldea, Assyria, Persia, Greece, Rome, and even Mexico and Yucatan. The Scottish Rite rituals and esotericism, therefore, are treasure houses, in which there are stored the ageless essence of immutable laws and the accumulation of thousands of years of Masonic experience. We learn our mission in a system thus derived of progressive degrees of instruction. We teach our members the highest ethics, the wise expositions of philosophy and religion, the blessings of charity. Our code of personal conduct stems from the precepts of chivalry, the 10 Commandments, and the Golden Rule. We reveal truly the wisdom of the lesser and the greater mysteries, and their symbols of words and phrases long considered lost. These were the truths that Plato, Pythagoras, Socrates, Homer, and the other intellectuals of the ages held in high esteem, that have reappeared in later religions and that never were disclosed until after timely preparation and purification of selected and trusted initiates. Our degrees represent the study and reflection of many men during many years at heavy cost, the culling of hundreds of volumes for effective portrayals and illustrations, and more labor than the accumulated endeavors of a lifetime engaged in efforts to attain eminence or riches. Our members, therefore, receive a gift of the greatest value. They gain a comprehensive knowledge of our heritage, of history, philosophy, religion, morality, freedom, and toleration, and of their relationship to their Creator, their country, their family, and themselves. These well may lead also to that understanding of identity, clarity of mind, and energy of will that propel toward personal success in life. We carry out our ritualistic mission in a series of spiritual, charitable, and moral programs. We make living, breathing, vital parts of our activities the recovery and maintenance of moral standards and spiritual values, the pride and patriotism and love of flag and country, the dispensing of charity without regard to race, color, or creed. Ours, therefore, has been a strong voice for human dignity, justice, moral values, and civic responsibility. Through our teachings, millions of men and women have discovered an opportunity to lead more rewarding lives. The example of our actions has been stirring and inspiring as that of our collective commitment to true human progress. I should say a word also as to membership in our fraternity. We welcome and initiate inquiries from Master Masons of regular and recognized lodges. Thereby we grow and expand the light. Our officers and committees devote long hours in evaluating and deciding upon those we feel should progress beyond the screening process and become entitled to pass through the mystic gate of the Scottish Rite Masonry. All who seek entry are commended for their interest and vision. Sponsorship and standards of character, morality, and training are required, of course, but every candidate will receive serious consideration. Thus we assure compliance with our time-tested standards and selection process. A new member is made and welcomed and invited to participate in our activities. And so, to end as we started, when we sought a definition. To me, the Scottish Rite can be likened to a tree of sparkling symbolic jewels, surmounted with the blazing star of truth that displays a dazzling splendor of the mystic doctrine of the universe, and the reflected glory of the deity. Hence, inspired by our accomplishments of the past and encouraged by our endeavors of the present, we go on to even more monumental achievements in the great tomorrow, toward a greater and more glorious Scottish Rite. Henry C. Clausen, Sovereign Grand Commander, Scottish Rite of the Southern Jurisdiction, United States of America. Pretty fantastic the way he writes about the Scottish Rite being the home of the mysteries. You know, several years ago, we introduced a talk of Henry Clausen that started with Ernest Borgnine, the famous actor, who is also a Scottish Rite Mason, a 33rd degree. Many people don't know this, but Ernest Borgnine actually said at one point Masonry was his religion, quite to the chagrin of other men in the fraternity. That notwithstanding, he introduced Henry Clausen, who talked about the mysteries of Freemasonry. And I will put a link in the show notes back to the episode that we did, but we cleaned up the audio and hopefully you really enjoy what he has to say about it. Anyway, more from Henry Clausen in future episodes. The next piece I have for you is called The Importance of True Brotherhood by Milton Fields, 33rd degree, out of Rockville, Maryland. This was written back in 1987. Man petitions for membership in the Masonic fraternity for a variety of reasons. Because of its reputation as the great fraternal order that it is, because of its many charitable and social activities, because a close friend truly enjoys his association with its members, or just because he has a surplus of time on his hands. Once he becomes a member, he cannot help but become intrigued by what he sees and hears. Of much interest in the dedication of the brethren, the close fraternal relationships of everyone, the mysterious signs of recognition, as well as the very atmosphere that surrounds a Masonic lodge today as it has for centuries. If he is impressed deeply enough, he develops a desire to participate in lodge activities. He volunteers or agrees to take part in degree work or to serve on committees. Gradually, he builds for himself a secure place or a niche in the lodge, and he becomes a good and happy Mason. However, if his initial contacts with the membership happen at a time or a place where those he meets are themselves preoccupied or deeply involved and do not have the time or the inclination to become friendly, he is left to himself, feels neglected, unneeded, and is convinced that Masons are cold and unfriendly. In short, he becomes disillusioned. We Masons must guard against letting this happen. We, especially a Mason who signs a petition of an applicant for membership, have an obligation to prevent this from occurring. Minimally, we should take the new member in charge, introduce him around, and find some point where he may dedicate an interest in something or someone. This is of prime importance. We should not cast a newcomer loose to become lost among a group of relative strangers. Too many of us happy and secure in a relationship of long-standing fraternal association do not recall the early days of membership in the craft, when we too had a desire to become an integral part and to share a feeling of belonging, where brotherhood is so important. Too few of us take the time or effort to engage in introspection and therefore are not consciously aware that an inventory of ourselves in comparison to non-Masons reflects a rather hefty surplus on our side. Brotherhood, the basic principle upon which Masonry exists, is the strongest psychological plus in our lives. As Brother Masons, we are members of the largest family anywhere. If you doubt that brotherhood is the strongest tie amongst Masons, consider the multitude of Masonic lodges, clubs, and other appendant bodies around the world in which you can mingle, be called a brother, and are welcomed virtually as a member of family. If we do not call him brother, how can we call him father? The modes of recognition, the customs, the esoteric signs, words, and actions are as effective a tie that binds as any known to man. When a Mason, after a trying day at the office or a tiring day at any vocation, enjoys a satisfying dinner and lazily remarks, "I think I'll skip lodge tonight and just relax in front of the TV," he should instead devote a moment of retrospection and not fall into the line of least effort. Such complacent indulgence should be replaced by a feeling of thankfulness and a reminder that he is one of the most fortunate of all men, having at his fingertips the great pleasure and enjoyment of that most precious gift, brotherhood. Not only is he the beneficiary of the wonderful warmth of communication with his brethren, but he provides to his fellow man by his very presence one of man's most pleasant and rewarding feelings, that of brotherhood. There are few greater occasions or experiences to a brother Mason than that of entering a full lodge room and spending an evening in communication with his Masonic brethren. Most of us can recall an exceptionally enjoyable evening in lodge when we had anticipated a rather uneventful or dull one. A chance meeting with a brother from a faraway jurisdiction could result in a most interesting and long-lasting friendship. Consider also that by your regular attendance you give your support in great measure to the social and fraternal functions conducted by the fraternity, which helps to make for a more viable and stronger organization. This is especially important in functions and events in which our ladies are present. The closeness and association of our ladies with one another make for a far more harmonious home-family life by having your family feel that when you attend lodge, function, or event, you are with ones they already know. Brotherhood applies not only to your fellow man, but also to our families. By all means, do not fall into the subconscious complacency which is so easy for many who are not alert to the danger of this type of lethargy. By occasionally counting your assets, especially those that non-Masons do not have, you are bound to be thankful that you are on the plus side of the ledger. Remember, it is your world in which to live. You should make every effort to make it a far better place. Ooh, Milton Fields, 33rd degree. Hitting a little too close to home, even for me. Why do I say that? Well, I can't tell you how many times I have sat there thinking, maybe I won't go to lodge tonight. I could just sit here and watch some telly, hang out with my wife, and that's great. But when we take mental stock of what's at stake by not going, and what we're actually doing, well, sure, you're cultivating and spending time with our families, just like we probably and hopefully do every day. But that one lodge night, we could be impacting far more. We are supposed to be better men. And not so much with lodge, but in things that I know I need to do. A lot of times I think, it'd be real easy to just pick up my phone and scroll, or pick up my video games and get lost in the video game for a couple hours. And then I think, wait, I've got to put a podcast together. And so that's what I do. I take mental note, and many times that's the motivation and the inspiration that makes me do things. It's the realization of exactly what Milton said, that the world is what we make of it, and we should make it better, and we can't get caught up in this sort of laziness or lethargy. He's rather polite with it. But I feel like this is a calling card for a lot of brothers around. Even if you don't feel like I'm talking to you, I think we all kind of feel that way sometimes. I know I do. And if I feel it, I know you guys feel it sometimes too. I think it's only human. But it's always important that we participate. Whatever it is in life, participate. Just be there, show up. Anyway, that's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed. We'll catch you all on the Craftsman Plus Facebook group. If you're a supporter of the show, you can find that on Facebook and join, and we'll make sure that you're a fellow contributor, producer, legacy partner, and we'll let you in. And we do some discussions there. I share some exclusive content from the show on there, questions and things that I've asked guests on the program that didn't have time to get into the audio portion of an interview. So just things like that, little bonuses. But anyway, so one more time, I want to thank our producers, fellows, contributors, and legacy partners. Again, if you're curious on how to support this show, head on over to wcypodcast.com, click on support the show, and check out the various options we have available. I really appreciate any and all considerations. We'll talk to you all next week. And don't forget, we've got Brother Jason E. Reichenberg coming on next week to talk about his new book and some other things. So anyway, until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.
This is